Important topic here. Authorities are cracking down on an incredibly dangerous criminal network out there with a strong online presence. My next guest has more details on the 764 organization, and here's what you need to know as parents. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us Greg Dupree, a familiar face, former law enforcement officer with TLAC now. Greg, what we have seen across the country is individual after individual in recent months taken down by federal investigators. One, the latest, the guy in Tampa, Florida, accused of exploiting children. But what I found was interesting, even more interesting, was that there is an entire network, an organized group that they are calling the 764 organization. For those who are wondering what it is and how dangerous it can be, what do you know about the 764 organization?
Okay. The 764 organization was started right here in Texas, in Erath County, by a young man named Bradley Cadenhead, who set this up where he targeted and exploited young children over internet, social media, gaming platforms, and he built this network based primarily just to do that. It promoted child sexual abuse material. And he would go out and target these kids with low self-esteem or who had eating disorders, and they were easy enough to find on social media. And once he got on gaming platforms, and once he got a hold of them, he would bring them over to Discord, which is a community site where it initially started for gamers, but there are all sorts of online communities over there. And they could have private chats. And what he would do, he would convince these kids to start doing things such as sending sexually explicit photos, self-mutilation, and even to the point of suicide. Now, he was arrested and charged back in 2023 for these crimes, and he is currently serving 80 years in prison. But the seed had already been planted, and the network started to grow. And Isaiah, it's not just a problem here in the United States, it's an international problem. Canada has a serious problem. They've done a lot of investigations where kids have been sucked into this network. And the really unique thing about it is that most of the perpetrators are kids themselves. You might have a 13-year-old exploiting a 16 or 17-year-old. Mm-hmm. And so the majority of their targets, as I said, are kids, but so are the majority of the perpetrators, and it's continuing to grow.
When we see networks like this, we're almost confused on how they survive. How do people get involved when the FBI has always got an eye on this kind of stuff?
Right.
But people are still able to do it. People are still exploiting children. And I think one report indicated that it had a satanic connection with it.
Exactly.
So it has tentacles out there.
It's connected. Well, the inspiration for this network came from another group of satanic neo-Nazis called the Order of Nine Angels. And it just grew from there. And the stories that you've seen is that they want to create chaos. They want to promote hatred, not with any specific group in mind. They target everybody. It's really an anarchist group, and they just want to create total chaos and disrupt everything about the government that they possibly can. But it's all based in hatred and exploitation.
What should parents do to protect their children in a situation like this if they are mainly targeting children out there, and especially if some of the perpetrators happen to be teenagers themselves?
Right. You want to look at your child's profiles, what they're doing, obviously monitor their internet and social media activity. You want to pay attention to their behavior. You also want to pay attention, look for the signs of graffiti. It could have they spell cult, CLVT. That's one of the signs. They also use the initials MKY, obviously 764. The 764, for those who wonder where the number came from, as I said, it started right here in Texas. When Bradley Cadenhead started this, he just used the first three numbers of his zip code right there in Stephenville. So that's where those numbers came from. But back to your original question, as I said, you want to monitor their social media activity. You want to pay attention to their behavior. Are they depressed? Are they suffering from any type of behavioral issues? And are they spending inordinate amount of time on social media looking at dark subject matter? You also want to pay attention to see if there are any signs of self-mutilation. Are they cutting themselves? Even if those are getting tattoos, look at the tattoos, see what the tattoos say. And then you want to see if they're being more reclusive and spending more time closed in on social media and the internet than they are outside with their friends. If they're completely cut off and reclusive, that's a strong indication that something is going on with them, and you want to look a little bit deeper into what's possibly going on.
Horrible situation, but we know the feds are out there looking for those who may be complicit in this organization and group.
Exactly.
And of course, it's just a scary situation for parents out there. You have to take the time to make sure your children are okay.
Exactly.
And pray.
Right. And it's not just, the FBI is looking at this, but, our law enforcement, local law enforcement agencies across the country, they have been very diligent in looking at this organization. And the thing is, it's just only recently, within the last couple of years or so, that they've been able to put the pieces together and say, okay, now we see this network and how large it is. Now the FBI is stepping in, and as I said, there are also international agencies looking at this too, because it has grown by leaps and bounds across the world.
Incredible segment there. Make sure you check on your children where they're on the computer or on social media to make sure that they're okay. Those individuals out there are looking to harm them and take advantage. So be careful, parents.